is we're seeing a lot of companies that have injured the solar industry because they were not able to get residential jobs installed. They did jobs without pulling permits. They lied to the customers about what it's going to do, what it's going to produce. And this has left a blemish on the entire solar industry. So one of the things that I work to do is be able to regain the trust with the customers that are large companies that are able to use virtual offices, virtual assistants to get all of these things done at a fraction of the price. It's a terrible look for the industry when a finance company has 10,000 orphan loans that people stop making the payments on all over the country because they were sold something that was not true. Cool.
Okay. Hello everyone, this is Vinny this side from Social Heat, and today we have Matt here on our podcast. So Matt, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Matt Reynolds from Charleston, South Carolina. I've been in the solar industry for about 15 years. So I started off on a roof as an installer and then was able to progress through the ranks, and I've been very fortunate and lucky in my career that I'm able to do. Now I'm involved in utility scale solar projects all over the world.
Oh, sounds good. So right now, you're doing operations all over the world. Can you tell me a little bit about more that?
About the solar projects? Sure. I'm
Yeah.
involved with one company that is developing projects domestically in the United States, and I'm a partner there, and I am also a partner and chief development officer of a company called Watt Crowd. And Watt Crowd is a new platform where anybody can invest, right? And they can see a return on their investment, and they can buy a piece of a solar farm that's located in Sri Lanka, Zambia, Italy, South America, wherever. Anybody has the opportunity to invest in it, make a change, and see a return on their investment. So anybody who has a few dollars to spend, it's not much, right? We've broken this project down very basically that anybody can afford to invest in it. If it's $1, if it's $500, if it's $500,000, anybody can invest. They can own a portion of this, and they can see the return. So they get a little bit of their money back each year over 25 years. So I'm excited to do that. And these projects, a lot of them, depending on which country it's in, is bringing power to people who've never had electricity before. So these are what we call the feel-good projects as well.
Okay, sounds good. So basically, how much return can someone expect from this kind of investment?
Most of the time, it gives people the option on what they need that to be. If there's more money to be profited than what they're looking for, then the portion of those proceeds can go to another nonprofit that is partnered with this company. By the way, this company is called Watt Crowd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Watt is the name of the company, it's the name of the platform, and it is the name of the entity that is developing projects all over the world.
Got it. So
Yep.
basically, can you tell us how you got started in this solar industry?
So, the truthful way that happened was I was a bartender in downtown Richmond, and a friend of mine came and asked me what I was doing. This was about 16 years ago. Asked me what I was doing that week, and I told him I was working at the bar at night. And he said, "Well, how about during the day?" And I said, "Well, I work late, so I'll probably be sleeping." He said, "Well, why don't you come with me?" I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm going to solar power a chicken house." And I said, "Solar power a chicken house? That doesn't make any sense. You must be drunk." And he said, "No, I'm not drunk. I'm going to solar power a chicken house." So I said, "Okay." And this was a dear friend of mine, still is. I said, "Okay, well, when you go to solar power this chicken house, you let me know and I'll come with you, my friend." And sure enough, Monday morning, 6 o'clock, I woke up and he was standing over me saying, "Let's go." And we installed 30 kW of PV on a commercial poultry operation up in the mountains in Virginia. After that, I got back, quit my bartending job, and I was heading into solar. That's been some years ago. So I did the installs for a few years, and then I wised up and said, "Man, it's too hot on this roof. I need to get smart and be in front of a computer like Bennett and enjoy some of the air conditioning." So that's where I segued into that. I was with one company, the same company, for quite some time. And then I moved to Charleston, where I'm originally from, started my own company with a partner. That company's still around. They still bear my name and my partner's name. I had an exit from that company, and now I work with companies all over the country, and I help them scale and grow from small to medium size, from medium to large. I help them scale and grow, and I do the other projects internationally as well.
Okay, so basically these companies which you help to scale and grow, are these only solar businesses, or like you have different types of businesses there as well?
So I'm involved in a few different types of businesses, but any business that I is going to be based in energy, one way, shape, or form. Mostly solar energy, right? Because that's my background, and that's what I'm the most knowledgeable of. I can't help somebody who's oil. I can't help somebody who's selling natural gas. That's not my background, but I'm pretty familiar with the solar industry, I think.
Got it. So basically, what's your mission now at this point of time?
The mission now, I've been, some of the successes that I've been very fortunate to have in my career have been being able to train salespeople and watching them come out and grow and start their own companies and then build their own lives and build their own companies. So I love that aspect of it. I love it when I work with, a very small installation company, right? Just one guy and maybe one person in a truck, and I see them scale and I see them, okay, now they've got a consistent amount of jobs that they're sourcing from another sales company. Well, that's great, but unless a company has their own installations, then they're at the mercy of whoever they work with, right? If I get all my jobs and all my installs from Bennett, then my company is reliant on him. Well, that's not standard for me. That's not safe for me. So I help them and coach them. I train their sales reps so that they can have their own in-house salespeople. Because a company that doesn't have their own sales is reliant, in my opinion, too heavily on other companies.
That's definitely correct. So as you said, like it's important for companies to have their stuff in-house, right?
I think it is. I think for the longevity of a company, everybody is in the industry to make a nickel. So regardless of how long of a relationship an installer has had with a sales organization, more times than not, right? More times than not, what will happen is that the sales organization will jump ship and work with a different installer if it means that they can save a nickel or a dime, right? And I've seen that happen all too often with sales organizations and installers where they were not able to keep the loyalty there, right? So what I encourage all the sales organizations to do is, when you find somebody who's good, who does their job, don't be so quick to jump ship over that nickel that you might have gained if it's going to increase the amount of time that you spend on the jobs.
Makes sense.
Right? Some level of transparency there. What we're seeing now in the solar industry, at least in America, is we're seeing a lot of companies that have injured the solar industry because they were not able to get residential jobs installed. They did jobs without pulling permits. They lied to the customers about what it's going to do, what it's going to produce. And this has left a blemish on the entire solar industry. So one of the things that I work to do is be able to regain the trust with the customers. Really make it so that the customers have a better understanding about what it is that they're buying. The methods that I use to sell solar to a customer, the methods that my sales reps to sell solar to a customer is completely different. When we leave the customer's house, we don't show the customer a PowerPoint presentation and say, here's what it's going to produce. If I come to your house, Vinette, and I say, here's a presentation, this is how many panels I can fit, and this is what it's going to produce, that's suspect. But if you, Vinette, walk through a simple couple questions yourself and you generate your own production estimate, that's gospel. You can believe what you did more so than you can believe I show you. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. So once you like come across with companies which you are gonna work with, and you're gonna scale those installer companies or sales organizations. So what are the initial first things which you need to make sure like these guys need to get these things right?
I mean, the steps are always pretty clearly laid out, right? You want to be able to have consistent work, and then while you're working on building your own in-house sales team, you need to be able to have the tools that are there for them first and foremost. Meaning that,
Okay.
and, in the United States, when the majority of people buy solar, they're either going to purchase that through a financing company or they're going to go for a lease, right? Depending on their tax situation and what's better suited for them. Well, if you don't have those tools in place and you hire a sales rep, he's got nothing to work with, right? If you don't give the sales rep the option to be able to finance a job for a customer,
Mhm.
are you leaving that sales rep? So making sure that you have these tools in place, and that has become very hard here recently because of all the things that I just mentioned about the terrible experiences that customers and the solar industry have had. The finance companies are looking to regulate this on their own, which I encourage, because I would encourage the finance companies to change the regulations more than I would ask the government to step in and make changes to the regulations. The industry should govern and it should regulate itself more so than we have to get any outside help to do that. So I am appreciative of the finance companies for taking these steps. However, I wish there was a way to find more of a middle ground where the smaller companies looking to grow have that opportunity, because right now it's hard to qualify for financing with most of the finance companies out there unless you're already a large company.
That's definitely correct.
Yep. So this is some of the things that we're seeing in the industry now.
So, like as you said, you have been in industry from the last 15 years. So how like how this industry have changed in these years, and what do you think where this is gonna go in future?
Um, it's interesting to see how everything has changed and played out since when I first started. When I first, it seemed like solar was such a new concept in a lot of these places that they had one-to-one net metering, right? They had even trade net metering programs where the utility was crediting the customer at the same rate they were charging them. These programs still exist in a few places, but now with NEM 3.0 coming out in California, you've got places like Georgia, and they're not terribly friendly solar policies. It's happening all over that this industry has becoming more and more reliant on storage, right? So the industry is going towards energy storage, self-regulation. So if that's the case, then it's all going to be about who's got the most efficient, effective, and available batteries. Right now, you can look online and there's millions of ads all over LinkedIn or whichever social media platform you use that advertise how cheap these batteries are. But when you do a little bit more checking and due diligence, you find out that they don't stock the batteries here in America. You have to buy them in China, Guangdong, Shenzhen, or wherever they're made, and then they have to get shipped over. Well, nobody wants to wait a couple extra months in order for that to happen. So it's really becoming interesting seeing the dynamic play out with the manufacturing companies who are now focused on selling direct, and the wholesale companies, because there are benefits to both. So seeing companies navigate which relationships are the more important to focus on, either buying direct or using wholesale, has really been interesting to me, right? You see new wholesale companies popping up all the time. The largest ones are, the Sonopars, the CEDs of the world. Now there's competition coming in with these guys where you're going to see more branch locations of different solar supply houses all over the place. What that's going to do to the market, right? The technology is always improving. I remember when I first started using Enphase on those first couple of jobs, it was the old M190s, right? So it was quite some time ago. Panel efficiency. The first panel that we ever installed was a 225 watt panel, and that was the latest and greatest in efficiency. That was super high efficient at that time. So it's interesting how everything's been evolving, how we're seeing some manufacturing coming back over to here. I think that comes in waves. I think it comes and goes. When I first started into the industry, they already had American panel manufacturing companies here. You had Suniva, you had Solar World. So if a company cannot be competitive on the market, meaning that they can't make the products that are as efficient or more efficient, regardless of the price. I know a lot of people who would pay more for a more efficient panel, and the industry has shown us that time and time again. I know people who would pay more for a panel that looks better. You've got a lot of panel manufacturing companies like Area that show that, right? They've got a very sleek, very attractive panel. There's people who will pay for that. So being able to find a niche so that we're all fitting into the same, we're all fitting into the same peg makes sense, or the same peg in the same hole makes sense, right? And I love what it's doing. Panel prices are very competitive in the United States right now compared to where they were even this time last year.
So, what do you think? Like, as a business owner, being competitive is being an advantage, or like charging more for your services or for your product, or doing like more for less? What do you think is better?
Well, I think the panel prices have come at a very interesting time because the interest rates on a lot of the loans for the residential deals are very high currently, right? So we had to figure out ways, and the industry is always really good at this, figuring out ways to remain competitive and remain relevant. We always, we always figure out a way to do that. And that's not just due to the credit of the people here in America. That is a global effort that happens to make sure that we all stay relevant, make sure that we're not pricing ourselves out of an industry. So even with the interest rates as high as they are and the dealer fees on residential loans as high as they are, the industry has found a way to make it happen. So, my kudos and my hats off to everybody who's been a part of that. We really appreciate it.
That's sweet. That's sweet. So, like, the solar business was your first business, or you have been in different industry before coming to solar?
No, solar was it. Before that, I was on the food and beverage industry. Right?
Okay, sounds good.
That's it. That's been my livelihood. I lucked out when I got into solar.
Oh, that's it. So, like, when you got started in solar, okay, what did you think of yourself? Like, where this is gonna go, and like, have you achieved what you have thought at that time? Like, how it feel?
I was a different case when I got into the solar industry because I had started and I had a little bit of a background in installation. I probably would have fired myself if I would have been, my own boss, because it took me a long time to go from, installer to salesperson. And I realized it because on a lot of fronts, I was making it too complicated. I used to give the customers 3 different options on racking. I'd say, well, I can use the Iron Ridge XR100, and then I can span it every other truss, or I can use the Pro Solar. And at the end of the day, that made it too much for them. So I got so frustrated one day, and I'll never forget, the gentleman's name was Calvin Cherry in Northern Virginia. And I went up and I laid it out for him, and I made it very simple. On top of that, I said, now pull out your laptop. And he said, okay. So I made the customer do his own PV watts, right? The customer ran his own PV watts from the InRail portal, and this was the old version of it. He said, this is what it's going to do. I said, yeah. He said, fine, I'll take it. I'll buy it. And that was how I got my first sale. After that, I noted there were some things on both ends that made it simple. Number one, keeping it very simple for the customer. But number two, letting the customer tell me. Because once we ran a PV watts, he turned around and said, but if I add 2 more panels, then I can produce this much power. Then I can run my AC a little bit more, right? So at the end of it, I didn't come there with a proposal. He told me what he wanted. And we had a trust and rapport at that point, right? And that's what sold that deal.
Oh,
so
it's been
yeah. So, and I think that's what a lot of the industry is missing, is a lot of transparency. I know there are a lot of times in this industry when you have sales organizations, or maybe even sales, excuse me, sales and organizations, where they will, and maybe not even meaning to, they will overpromise, meaning that, oh, well, yes, the solar is going to cost you $80,000 for this 5 kW, but we're going to give you a new window, or we're going to give you some free insulation, and we're going to give you a free thermostat. And all those things do help and contribute, but not to the scale and to the portion that it will ever make financial sense to the customer. I'm not going to get into names, but when I was an installer, that company did the installs for one company in Virginia, and
Mm-hmm.
we solar on this older lady's house, right? And we never got paid on the job. And we asked the sales company, and they said, "Well, we didn't get paid by the homeowner." So we go out to this lady's house. The lady comes out, and they sold her, and we didn't know this at the time. The installer didn't know what the sales entity sold it for, but they sold her an 8 kW for $120,000 cash.
My God.
8 kW for $120,000 cash, and they told her she would never pay a power bill again. And this lady came out, we went and knocked on her door. She came out and she had tears in her eyes, and she had balled up change and crumpled up ones. And she said, "I spent my life savings on this so I wouldn't have a power bill again. And I've still got a power bill. I know you guys did the work and you deserve to get paid. This is all I've got. I will work on getting you some more money." And we told that lady she could keep her money, because it wasn't her fault that she was lied to. It wasn't her fault that she was manipulated, right? So installers, be careful of who you choose to work with, right? Once we left that meeting, we fired that sales company. We choose not to work with them. There are still plenty of predatory sales organizations out there, and I cannot stress this enough. A lot of times we find out that they don't even knowingly become predators, right? A sales individual, a sales rep is only as good as the people who trained them, right? So whoever the sales manager. So if I am new to the industry and somebody tells me this is how it works, this is what they can expect, then that's what I'm going to believe, and that's what I'm going to tell the customers,
Right.
right? Blame those sales reps. I blame the people who train them, for and predatory sales. The next thing that's very important, and one of the paramount things, is knowing your market. Very quickly, people, when you start to grow and you want to scale, there are certain markets that are going to be more solar friendly than others. There are certain markets that you have certain licensing for that could require months to get. So if you sold a job in a state where you're not licensed, you got to figure out how to pull the contracts, pull the permits and everything. Now that customers sit around waiting for months. This is giving the customer a bad experience, all because somebody said, "Yeah, I think I can do it," without doing their due diligence, doing the research, and finding out what's advantageous to the customer, and they won't. Because if you take care of the customer will take care of you.
That's definitely the correct, man. That's a golden nugget. So basically, you started as an installer and then you got into sales, right?
Correct.
So when you like move forward and build sales team for yourself or the other installers, so what are the steps you take, or what are the things like which people need to make sure before diving into this?
So when the company that I was with and I started into solar, both as an installer and sales, that company had Virginia in their name, and they didn't have a lot of interest in leaving Virginia. Well, at the time, South Carolina, where I'm originally from, was a much better market for solar, right? Because of the financing rates, because of the tax credits that were available and still are in South Carolina, it was a much more advantageous market. So I moved back down to Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm originally from, and was going to manage somebody else's company. And I met with a gentleman, and he said, "If you know all this, why don't you just start your own?" And I said, "Well, I'm not as good on the back end as I am on the front end, helping the sales reps, training the sales reps, getting out in the field, making sure the installations happens correctly. I don't want to sit on the laptop all day. I want to be out in the field working with the salespeople, with the installers, and making that happen." So I was very fortunate that I found a partner in that company who enjoyed the other part of it, right? And he was really good at that. So it's very important. I would encourage smaller installers, right? There is a modality called a solarized program, right? So a solarized program typically will work when you have a third-party nonprofit, right? And that third-party nonprofit will vet and find a local installer, right? So they will find somebody that they are comfortable with working with, and then they will present it to the masses. They will present it. They will do solar workshops. They will advertise for you. And in return, the nonprofit company gets a small piece of it. but then everybody pays the same price, everybody gets the same material. It's a very cut and dry process. I would encourage the local nonprofits to reach out to local smaller installers, right, and begin a relationship there, because obviously we can tell there is a thing in this industry where it appears as though certain companies don't get that they cannot fail. It appears as though they get so big that inevitably they will fail, right? If Vinit sells a job, there's only so many people who can make money and profit off your job. So eventually it will get to a point where there's too many people eating off a deal that it's so big that, in my opinion, and from what I've seen in this industry, that they will inevitably collapse. And that happens sooner than later, depending on how that company is structured. That brings me to another example, right? Right now, what we see, especially in India, places like India, we're seeing that instead of having somebody in an office that you're paying a high American wage to with salary, benefits, and all that stuff, if that person's doing plan sets, designs, all those things, you can get that done at the same quality or better overseas at a fraction of the price. Now, you've got companies that are large companies that are able to use virtual offices, virtual assistants to get all of these things done at a fraction of the price. And that's been exciting to see. I'm fortunate that I work with, a couple people in Pakistan and India and the Philippines to be able to actualize some of these projects. And it's been really comforting to see, how I watched them and how they've grown in this industry as well.
Right, like basically in India, the work culture here is, man, like if you want, people are gonna work for you entire day. Like they can literally go home and open up their laptop and start doing the work again. It's just like that. I've seen my family members who just works even when they come home. But that's not what we see in US. Like the work-life culture there in US is pretty much balanced, man. Like people only work when they want. So the thing is different. And
I think COVID changed some of that. It did finally put a new perspective onto people that, you don't have to wake up, go to the office, clock in, work until this time, you're done working for the day. Like, I think a lot of that has changed and vanished since COVID came, since the pandemic. And a lot of that has changed. But in essence, you're right. A lot of times if people are making enough money that they are comfortable, they lose the drive to want to progress in it. And, not everybody is like that. Well, if you take, for example, I worked with one individual, and when we met, he had literally a in his house in the Philippines, and now he's paid a decent wage in American salary, and that money gets transferred, and he gets paid that in Filipino currency, and now he's, I don't know if he's the richest of the rich, but he paid for his own house. Got floors. He's got a full-time nanny for his child. He's getting his house renovated. He's getting that stuff done actively. So he's able to accomplish so many more things. And it's good to see that happen. But I think you're right. I think a lot of times, up until recently, American work culture was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then once they got out of work, they were done, regardless if the work was done or not.
Yeah, like crazy world we live in.
It is. Sometimes I miss those days.
So, like, what do you think right now? What success looks like to you, and do you think, like, do you consider yourself a successful person?
Success to me in an industry that is driven off customer service and customer expectations. Success to me looks like a background of happy customers. Success to me looks like working with, companies all over the country that never got sued for, wrongful installation or gross neglect or burning down somebody's house or, not being certified in the equipment that they were installing, right? Success to me looks like, and I've been fortunate this has happened a few times. I go and see a customer randomly or I run into them on the street and they go, "Matt, you lied to me. You lied to me about this solar." And I go, "What do you mean?" And they go, "This thing is doing way better. It's producing so much more power than what you said it was going to," right? That's success to me. those types of relationships. So in that aspect, yeah, I guess I have been successful.
That's sweet. So, like, you're doing something platform like right now, okay, where you're doing your process around the world. So, what do you think, like, your future plans with that thing, and how can you like more people can get into this and connect with you?
So I think the most important thing here is, for everybody to, we're all in this industry for a variety of reasons. Number one, there has to be some grain of us in here that cares about what it is that we do, right? There has to be some of us in here that has to know that what we're doing is for a better purpose. If it's just for a paycheck, then it's always going to be lackluster and half-hearted. If it truly generates and makes you feel good to have happy customers who know that they made a wise investment in working with you and they're happy that they did it, and they're so happy that they can't help but to tell everybody else and give you referrals, right? Because the natural progression of this shouldn't be somebody's buying leads for the rest of their life. If they're good at what they do, if they're efficient at what they do, if they set reasonable expectations and they're able to meet those expectations, then they should have a referral base for a lot of this, right? So I want to see the industry move in a focus that is more customer driven. I want to see the industry move to, obviously more solar, right? And I'm not, I'm not the type of person who says, yes, solar is the end all. It's going to cure all the world's problems. It's not. Very plainly, it's not. But it is a massive step in the right direction of all the different types of renewables, right? From tidal energy is very exciting. Wind turbines are becoming more and more efficient, right? But you don't hear about that. You hear about the negative stories that happen. Well, a tornado came by. And look what it did to this wind turbine. Look what it did to the house next door, right? So all the different types of energy sources, they all need to be incorporated, right? As we stay away from fossil fuels and onto something that is truly renewable. So I look forward to seeing energy storage come about full circle where, and I think there are progressions there, but I look forward to seeing that become more and more affordable. I can't wait to see the day around when we have one solar panel that's making 1 kilowatt itself. That would be really exciting, right?
Yeah.
It would be a successful step forward for us. So I look forward to seeing all these things happening, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, here in America, we are capitalists, and it's got to make dollars in order for it to make sense. So I think we do a good job of putting that foot forward and making sure that the interests of the planet and the ecosystem and the environment that we live in are also making financial sense, right? So the new incentives that came out, and I'm not Democrat, Republican either way, but the new incentives that came out with this presidency have been very solar friendly. We're thankful for that, right?
Yeah.
However, we also feel like solar should stand on its own even without the incentives. But we're thankful for the ones that come out, and there are more and more that keep coming.
That's definitely correct. Like the tax incentives and other things just make solar more, like more accessible to the audience, to the homeowners.
Yep. I mean, not just that, under the new IRA and some of the new programs that were out. So if you are a 501c3, meaning that if you are a tax exempt entity, if you are a nonprofit, there is now a program where you can get a paper check because you don't pay taxes. You get a paper check in lieu of the tax credits. These sort of things that we've never had before really make it. So now churches, schools, city halls, town halls, any sort of nonprofit organization, they've always wanted to do that and put their best foot forward. And now here's an opportunity to do that where it makes financial sense as well.
That's definitely correct. So as you said, like referral is the best way to generate business, and that's definitely right. So what are your views on the methods like advertising, marketing to generate more and more leads?
That's a tricky question, right? That is a tricky question. I have worked with many solar lead companies in the past. Most of them aren't really worth their salt, right? Unfortunately, I don't think it's because they intend to be. I think if they could, they would provide better leads. But I think that they sell themselves short and go, well, this is good enough. Oh, well, they did say that they expressed some interest, and then you get the lead and call it, and it's a guy in an apartment who doesn't even live in a house, and he's renting that apartment. So of course he can't put solar panels up on a house because he doesn't own the house. He's renting an apartment or whatever the case may be. So, but there are really good companies out there like Clean Energy United, right? That's got good lead programs out there. There are plenty of companies that are out there that are doing their part. Ray Alonso down there does a great job of getting good leads for people. So there are companies out there that are worth it. Unfortunately, there's so many companies out there that are not worth their weight, or worth their price, so that it gives the industry a bad name. I also believe that there are much more effective ways of marketing solar that don't cost half as salesy. For instance, if you take the approach with the customer, like I'm going to walk you through this process and I want you to ask questions and I'm going to consult you, and I'm not going to come in here and say, oh, you're going to get this panel and this inverter because that's the only thing I know. I'm going to ask you questions and we're going to engage. I'm going to find out what's important to you, right? Is it important to you that you get an American-made panel, or does it matter to you as long as the price is in your wheelhouse and the warranties are the same, that the company's tier 1 or tier 2, whatever their mission statement is, right? I've seen plenty of tier 1 panel manufacturing companies fall and plenty of tier 2 companies that are still around. So having some of the options and being able to provide some of those things so that the customer is the one who gets the best deal. And I believe in full transparency and all honesty that is going to be the way that our industry survives based on, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you didn't really have a lot of customers who bought solar who were not happy, right? You had friendly net metering policies. You had honest companies who were doing the installation, who were certified, be it NABCEP certification, certified on the materials, right? There was a higher degree of certification that was required for these people. So I would like to see that come back a little bit more. I would like to see more utilities requesting that people have at least this level of knowledge in the industry before they go hooking something into somebody's electrical panel.
That's correct. This will have the industry dynamic balance. Right now there is too much saturation. There are too many people just coming and selling solar without having any knowledge. Right now anyone can say that they are the expert in the industry.
And there is also that NABCEP for PV technical sales, right? I think somebody doesn't necessarily need that to be an effective salesperson and to be an honest salesperson. And I know there are people who have that certification who still sell solar aggressively like that. So I think it's on the whoever owns the company to do some fact checking on whoever is below him. If he's got a sales manager, if he manages the salespeople by himself, depending on the size of the company, to ensure that everybody's getting trained in a way that offers transparency, right? Because transparency is where this industry is headed. It really would not surprise me, right? Because of the amount of orphaned loans. And when I say orphaned loans, what I'm speaking about specifically is you bought solar for your house in America, right? You financed it and you were told the system's going to save you $250 a month on your power bill, but it only saves $50 a month on your power bill. Is that something you're probably going to continue to make the payments on? Or are you going to voice a complaint? Well, the finance companies need to be able to take up for some of that as well, right? There needs to be some way on the back end that the finance companies can ensure that the loan that they're offering is not scamming somebody. And I think that the finance companies, your Good Leaps, your Mosaics, your Service Finances, right? And there's a lot of boutique lenders as well. I think a lot of those companies have some really interesting things coming down the pipeline that they're going to do to protect the investors, because it is a terrible look for the industry when a finance company has 10,000 orphan loans that people stop making the payments on all over the country because they were sold something that was not true.
That's last year I was working with a company, generating leads for them, and they have a finance plan where I don't know, they are partnered with one of the largest financing company. That's what they said, and they had the plan where they are giving commercial benefits to the residential homeowners, and they can also like remove the all the interest on their payments, something like that. And we just used all of that to run their ads, and the people like who was seeing that ad was amazed. Like they was literally saying, yeah, things, you guys are the scammer, that's not real, something like that. We got like a lot of hate from that type of ads, but those
Yeah.
things were real.
Yeah, and it's sad that the industry is that way. It's sad that there's a lot of mystery in it. Here's
Yeah,
another. I worked with one company that said that residential homeowners are able to take advantage of the 5-year depreciation table just like it was a commercial investment, right? And I was very skeptical about that. And I'm still like, I'm not a CPA. I'm not giving anybody tax advice, but apparently there
mm,
are IRS letter rulings out there, and if somebody does enough background and enough checking, that maybe they could justify that. And there's a company out there that gives a guarantee behind it, right? But again,
right.
shrouded, right? It's yes, you could, but you have to pay a whole lot for it, and I don't think that's conducive to the positivity of the industry. When you sell me solar, I should be able to get the same tax credits and tax incentives, right? If it's the same price that the next person sells me solar, you shouldn't be able to give me a better tax break than this
Yeah,
company over,
that's
right?
correct.
And that's sort of like, I don't know, that leads to some conflicts internally. But I digress. I think we just need more transparency in the industry, right? Nobody likes that game where they open up their power bill and they're like, "Oh, how much is it going to be?" Right? Nobody likes to play that game. People want control over their costs that are variable
Mm.
every month. So the industry will take care of itself as long as we're upfront and honest about where it's headed.
So, like, let's say we both are like selling in Virginia. You sells the same product, I also sell the same product, then there's third, fourth, fifth person who also are selling like the same thing. So what do you think, like how these people can differentiate themselves so they can do things differently and
Correct.
have, yeah.
There's already some platforms that people can use. There are some really educational tools out there for people like Energy Sage, right? Energy Sage does a really good job about being able to educate their customers on where they should go, who they should buy it from. Unfortunately, for Energy Sage, what they end up doing is promoting a race to the bottom because the customers end up buying whatever is the cheapest, and whatever is the cheapest is not good for the industry. I remember one time there was a solarized campaign down in Florida, and a gentleman who had a small solar company won this solarized campaign, right? And this was 12, 13 years ago. And he won it for $1.75 base cost per watt, turnkey installed. So after he did these 30, 40, 50 jobs for this one little small company, which was a lot of work, as soon as that was done, he folded up shop and closed because he didn't have enough money to sustain himself. So staying away from traps like that. Sites like Energy Sage that are good to educate the customer, right? But at the end of the day, if the customer bases their purchase just off of the bottom line and whoever is offering
Mhm.
it, they're going to get what they pay for.
That's right, that's right. So when you sell solar, okay, so what do you think, where you want to strike the price at? Like, do you want to be the premium, or you want to land your pricing somewhere in middle, or you can like be the lowest one?
No, I mean sometimes it ends up working out that way that we are the cheapest, but I'm not in the industry for that. I don't want to be the cheapest, right?
Yeah,
I need the customer. Typically, the way that you build value with a customer when you're speaking to them is by
yeah,
building rapport, right? So the more that you trust what I'm saying is the more that you're going to put value in what it is that I'm offering.
right.
And if I come there and I present something to you, that's one thing. If I come there and I show you how to tell me what you want, that's
Mm-hmm.
trust. That's rapport. That's how you're going to generate a sale. And I might not be the cheapest and I might not be the most expensive, right? But
Right,
we like to be somewhere around the middle of the road, but build value in other ways, right? Like I've
correct.
said a few times, When we get done, the customers tell us what size system they want, not the other way around.
That's good. So like where when we raise the price, then it's definitely like the emotional investment of customer also increases. Like lower the price, lower the emotional investment. Higher the price, higher they are gonna be invested in us. Plus, if we can charge higher, then definitely like we can use some money to provide more value. Like we can invest more in our system, we can invest more in the experience which we can provide them.
Yeah, I think it's foolhardy, and again, the customers, this isn't their industry. They're relying on us to educate them. So I think it's foolhardy for us to expect, or for the customer to expect to pay the absolute cheapest price out there that nobody else could have, and then still have a company that's around in 5 to 10 years in case they get a leak in their roof, right? Or if a squirrel chews through a wire or whatever that could possibly happen. And it's because, this isn't their industry. They're just the customers in it. So there needs to be sort of a transparency there about, yes, there is margins to be here, but there's margins here because you want me here 3 years from now in case something happens. If a hurricane passes through and, you've got to collect an insurance check, you'd probably want the same people who did it last time to put it up this time for you. If something pops, what good is a workmanship warranty if my company is closed down? It's not worth anything. What a panel warranty if that panel manufacturing company is closed down, right? How many people have panels that had 25 or 30-year warranties and then that panel company just shut down? There's quite a few of them if you do your research, So having that level of honesty in the industry is really what we need right now.
Makes sense. So can you tell me like what's the biggest challenge which you have faced in this industry, and if you can like tell the solution about that, what will be the solution for that if other people are gonna face that same challenge?
It seems like this is not gonna make, it seems like we're not gonna have utility companies, at least for America, that are not as prone to integrate solar unless they are forced to, right? Unfortunately, sometimes when they're forced to, it puts pressure on people who don't get solar, or it raises their costs as well. But having a more progressive utility, like back in the day, Duke was a very progressive, a very solar-friendly utility, and then they hit their caps. Now they're resizing it, right? So, and having a state pass legislature for an RPS or a renewable portfolio standard is always going to be your first step to a much more solar progressive and friendly state. Thanks to Virginia for the Green Jobs Initiative that increased the amount of net metering policy and forced the utility there to install their own utility scale solar projects. I think Virginia has their own SREC market, which is super competitive. That's great. And there's a lot of people who are going to be happy with their systems and love what they do and love what they produce and are proud that they made that investment. There's going to be a lot of people like that. But there are still lots and lots of other states out there in this country where they do not have a renewable portfolio standard, or RPS. That is legislation that forces the utility to comply with whatever rules they made up. So you've got lots of states that could be great states for solar, right? Sunshine's all over this country. So you've got lots of states that could be great states for solar that are not, because the utility isn't forced to. So where's the legislation that forces these utilities to say, hey, I'm not going to name one in particular, but, hey, state that traditionally wasn't solar friendly, and we all know who they are, you have to allow 5% of your generation to come from even trade net metering programs, 1-to-1 buyback, right? But they don't do that. So you've got the people who buy solar there do it because they believe in it. And they, I sold solar one time to a guy who was 83 years old, right? Couldn't take advantage of the tax credits. I tried to talk him out of it. And you know what? I'm going to buy this anyways because I'm going to look my kids and my grandkids in the face, and I'm going to say, I didn't solve the world's problems, but I did my part. right? I didn't solve the world's problem. I did my part. So I gave that guy the cheapest solar panel installation that I possibly could have, just because I respected him for making that decision. It shouldn't be like that.
Right.
Georgia is just as good a state as Kansas is just as good a state as all these other states that should be just as progressive and solar friendly, right? Allow
Correct.
everybody the same chance, the same break. And I also think that the utilities have set the bar very low. They say, well, if we can't have more than 5% of our, generation come from solar because it's intermittent, meaning that if the sun's out but a cloud passes over, you want us, the power company, to pick up that load. And then when the cloud passes back over, then you want to go ahead and sell that power back to me again. There is an argument to be made there. There's some good points to be made there, right? But I think that threshold should be a little bit more than 5%. And when you talk about that on a national scale, you're talking about and millions of people getting a friendly solar policy, and that's what I'd like to see.
That's completely amazing, man. That's amazing. So can you tell me, like, right now, how you plan your day for success? Like, what your daily life looks like right now as a business owner?
The majority of it consists of, a lot of times, like I said, I work with people all over the world. So depending where these projects are located, my day can either start early or end really late. Sometimes I'm on a conference call at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And that conference call is on people who are in the Philippines, which are exactly 12 hours behind us. Or I'm talking to people in London, or I'm talking to people in Zambia, or I'm talking to people in Nigeria or Uganda or wherever the project location is, right? South America, all over the place. So my schedule's a lot more chaotic than most people, right? But it always starts off with the CRM that we have, that we use, and a lot of the companies I work with is called Sun-Based Data. In my opinion, they're one of the best solar CRMs out there. Sun-Based Data does a really good job of completely managing the entire company, right? It's not too you have one CRM that you can do all these things with. You can order plan sets, you can do site plans, you've got a job board, you can run financing, you can run profit and loss statements. It's got a separate app for door knocking and canvassing that's a part of it, right? So we like that CRM for most of the companies that we work with. So the day should start off looking at the job board for whatever company I'm working with at that time and saying, okay, where are we at here? What are we doing for this customer today? What are we doing for this customer? And going down that list and making sure that these jobs are progressing down the board. I mean, we got some people that'll tell you, my job is to look at the board and move things to the right, move them over to the completed pile, move them over here to where it says this job is done. So most of the companies, that's where it starts off with. And then you want to, obviously, the salespeople might be a little bit behind the times. So have conversations with salespeople and following up on it. Ensuring that everybody's on the same page, making sure that the salespeople are educated enough or that they are informed by whoever it is that they work with or that they report to be able to ensure that all of the information that they're giving the customer is correct, right? Like I will call a power company in a quick hot minute or shoot them off an email and say, hey, before I have this customer sign this contract, can you please explain this to me? Because I don't want to give the customer more than what they need or less than what they need. So please just walk me through a little bit about what net metering policy is. And sometimes the way it's written, explained can be a little different.
Got it. So Matt, like, do you read books? Do you follow books?
Sure.
Yep. So can you tell me, like, what are your best recommendation? Your best books which you have read?
40 Laws of Power, Bhagavad Gita is a really good book. I encourage that to a lot of people, right? The Tao of Physics is a really good book. If you're in the solar industry, maybe picking up on some of the books about solar. Jim Dunlop wrote a book on the basics of solar. Solar for Idiots. Starting off on the basics. What is a kilowatt hour? Where does the word electron come from? Right? Learning all the basics about your industry. I think there is a book called Solar Energy or Solar Power for Dummies or something like that. I read that one some time ago. Reading into that. Also, I try, if I can remember, I think it's important to do a little bit of, for a business owner to take a little bit of time out and do something for himself, regardless if it's running on a treadmill, doing some sit-ups, doing something physical where he can zone out for a second. I think that's
Right.
super.
So, like you mentioned Bhagavad Gita. So, how you come across Bhagavad Gita?
There was a time when I was reading lots of books. So I read the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Wisdom of the Talmud, books, the Tao of Pooh, the Day of Piglet, the Tao Te Ching. List goes on and on. I've read quite a few of them, right? And I think that, and I can sort of bring this back around. This is my own personal perspective, but if we look at, especially in this industry that we're in, solar energy, we take the word energy and we break that down and say energy is movement, right? It is force.
Right.
So if everything is combined and everything is part of the same, as we all are, right? Our bodies are made and comprised of the same elements that are in the solar panels that we sell to people's roofs. Silicon is one of the most prevalent elements on the planet, and we see that all over the place, right? But if we all down, we all have atoms and we all have things, and those things are moving, right? Everything's moving around us, just like energy is moving in a dance, like a cosmic dance, if you will, right? Sort of like Krishna and what's Krishna's wife's name?
Krishna's wife's name was, oh,
I'm going to judge you if you can't remember.
His love was Radha, and his wife's name was, I guess it was, oh man, let me Google it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just wanted to see if you knew, bro. It's okay.
No,
Okay, but there's a dance, right? It says that there's a cosmic dance, or that there is a movement between everything in the universe, and that's what we have. We've got a movement and a universality behind everything in the universe. The thing that make up your fingernails, to your hair, to the plastic that's on your laptop, right? To the glass that's on the lens of the camera. It's all comprised of the same elements, and there's space and there's movement and there's rhythm, or there's energy behind everything.
Correct.
Yep.
That's correct.
The chapter on the sorrow of Arjuna was very telling for me in the Bhagavad Gita. The sorrow of Arjuna was probably my favorite chapter in the Bhagavad Gita.
So you have read Mahabharat too?
Say it again?
You have read Mahabharat too?
No, I didn't. I have not. I haven't read the Sanskrits either, right? Some of those are very big, and I'm a busy guy. But I did make it through the Bhagavad Gita. But I always, I like to read and educate myself on as many things as possible. I think if I, as a man, stop trying to become a better man, then I'm a stagnant man, right?
That's right.
If I'm in the solar industry and all I sell is in-phase M190s and 250 watt panels, I'm going to get old and I'm going to get priced out and I'm going to get, outdated. So I've got to keep changing. I've got to keep evolving. I got to do that same thing as a person for myself, right? I'm trying to make myself a better man.
Correct. But and you also mentioned, you also mentioned 48 laws of power. Yeah. So what do you feel about that book and Robert Greene? Like, I also have laws of power with me right now. Yeah, I can show it to you.
For people, that's it. So I think for people who are able to understand what it is telling you, and if you put time and effort into recognizing what the steps are and what the features are that it's telling you, it can change somebody's life dramatically, right? Yeah. Because, and in my opinion, the reason that people don't have confidence is because they're unsure of things. So if I don't have confidence, I don't have self-control. I don't even have power over myself. So how can I help to influence a situation? So when I started reading Power, I thought it was gonna be completely different, and it was completely, reverse what I thought. So what do you think? Like, if this book can be in some vicious hand, so what do you think the effect is gonna be? Of course. I mean, that's with anything with anybody, right? It's you've got the ability and you've got the power or the ability to be able to do, great works with it or terrible works with it, right? Definitely, yeah. So it's, you take the bitter with the sweet, and hopefully whoever reads that book after you will use it for just as much good as you are.
That's correct. So, Matt, like, can you tell me what's the one thing you wished I would have asked? Like, what's the one question and how you would have responded?
Well, I was hoping at the end of this you were going to buy solar panels from me, right? Are you not going to buy solar from me now?
I will
Ship it
definitely,
to
I
you.
will.
Okay. No, I think you covered it all. I enjoyed it, brother. Hopefully, my story helps a lot of other people.
Yeah, definitely. Like there were a lot of valuable things in this interview, and there are many things which you dropped that can be valuable for a lot of people. And
I,
I personally learned a lot from you, and I definitely, like want to speak with you more in this in podcasts like this, and also in privately.
okay, perfect. I appreciate the opportunity, Bennett. I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, that's same for me, Matt.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye, buddy.